Hello, folks. This is Joe from My Geek Scene. I'm here with MC Lars. MC Lars, how are you doing today, sir?
You know, Joe, it's good to see you. We're kind of relaxed because it's the first show where we haven't gotten here right when they were opening doors. First time we've been early, which is great.
Yeah, the tour, the Mount Nerdcore Tour just started recently. So how's that been going?
It's good. I've worked with these guys a lot over the past 12 years, and turnouts are good. Merch is good. The venues are cool. It's nice to be able to do this consistently for so long, you know. And we started in the Midwest, and then we end in the South. And we've been doing the same exact tour with the same exact poster and everything for the past few years. And this is finally like the markets we've missed. So it's cool. It's cool. It feels like a end of a chapter or the beginning of a new chapter. It's kind of, it has a lot of significance for me personally, but it's fun.
I mean, that works out for me because that you're touring through the Midwest this time, because the last time you guys toured through, I was like, oh, there's no Michigan dates. And I was bummed out about that. But as fortunate to have it, you came around this time. So I guess good things come to those who wait.
Thank you, Joe.
So I wanted to dive into two particular songs from your massive catalog.
Yes.
So first question, why did you choose a string quartet version of Sanitarium as the basis of a beat for your song Art of Darkness?
Wow. Well, I thought that the Apocalyptica cover, it was haunting and beautiful. And that song is in a weird time signature. I think it's like in 4/5. And so if we had used the Metallica thing for the mixtape, it would have been harder to chop it up. It's easier to chop up like strings without percussion. So I've always wanted to use that sample.
Okay. And the second song, you featured Stza from Leftover Crack on Zombie T-Rex. How did that collaboration come about?
That's a great question. Years ago, he did a hip-hop project called Mad Cows when the Mad Cow disease came out. And Adam from Adam and His Package was trying to link us up to tour together. I'd seen him in Santa Cruz before. I was always a Leftover Crack fan. And we did part of the vocals when he was on tour in England. I was working on the album there. And then we did like extra ones in San Francisco. So, yeah. Are you a Leftover Crack fan?
Man, you know there's no such thing as Leftover Crack.
Hey!
I love Mediocre Generica.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the only album that I've heard by them. But like back in the day, I used to be part of the DIY punk scene based in West Michigan. And then I just came across Leftover Crack, and I was like, this is a solid album.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that because it combines thrash and ska, and his voice is so unique, and he loves rap, and yeah. He's an interesting guy, a cool guy, and it was really fun to work with him. I kind of wish I'd made that song the single and made a video for it, because it's really distinctive and fresh, and I think we could have done something cool. But I played that song when I've had a backing band. It works well, and I'll have like other guests, people do the scream, but I've never played it with him. Maybe one day.
What's to say that you can't still do a video?
That's a great point. Yeah, right? I guess, well, is there like after 5 years, is that too late, you think?
I don't know, man. You're the independent artist. You're in control of your what you choose to put out there. So you could do a music video for that if you'd like to.
That's true. Maybe for the 5-year anniversary.
There you go.
Hey.
You can tour behind that too.
You're smart, Joe.
From time to time, but don't let my girlfriend hear that.
Hey.
So actually, I wanted to learn more about you as a person. So
Cool.
What was the first album you purchased with your own money?
It would be the Simpsons Sing the Blues, which I think was 1990.
The tape?
Well, the tape, and then the tape got eaten in a rental car. Then I bought the CD, and I remember the CD was like $18, 10 songs. It was like the music industry is out to get us, but Bart Simpson, so it's okay.
Fair enough. Were there any particular albums that you've emotionally bonded with?
Wow. My favorite band of all time is King Missile. And
Detachable Penis King Missile?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's like one of their, I guess that's their one hit wonder kind of thing, but they have a very large, amazing catalog. And Happy Hour, the album that song is from, is great because it tells this whole story and it's beautiful. And I recently heard a Mike Eagle song that uses an interpolation of the song Why Are We Trapped? And I thought it was so cool that like I was one of the few people who recognized this deep cut, King Missile deep cut chorus. When I met him, we bonded on the fact that we both are big King Missile fans. So yeah, that's a special record to me for sure. And yeah, there's tons, but that came to mind.
All right, I guess a nice segue for me. Speaking of deep cuts, in the song The Dialogue with Ill Bill, you mentioned Nine Inch Nails as one of the bands you listened to while growing up. Favorite Nine Inch Nails song or albums?
Well, I think I love Broken and Downward Spiral. My favorite song is March of the Pigs because I love that juxtaposition of like the fast industrial sound and then like that piano kind of chorus.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Nine Inch Nails always inspired me, the idea that it could be one person doing everything for the most part, collaborating with people, but one person using the computer and the Macintosh as a tool. That was kind of rare, you know, in the post-Nirvana era. That was like a new kind of thing. That it was cool to use a computer to make heavy pop music, you know? Yeah.
I mean, The Downward Spiral was the first album I ever purchased with my own money.
Wow.
I mean, I remember like it was in middle school, and my class and I, for some reason, we did a field trip to a buffet place, and close to it was a Best Buy, and I snuck out of the buffet to go walk over to the Best Buy to go buy the album, because prior to buying that album, I would watch Nine Inch Nails videos uncut on public access television in Grand Rapids.
Oh, wow.
And I was like so afraid because I had the parental advisory sticker on it. I was like, they're not going to sell this to me. I'm going to be busted, you know? And looking back on it, that guy probably never cared. And he was like, give me the money. Here's your album. And then when I went home with that album, put on the headphones, it blew my mind.
Would you buy it on CD or
Yes,
tape?
CD.
Yeah. What was so cool about the album was the design, the pieces of it, like that huge book and the cardboard case, and yeah, I like that about Nine Inch Nails, that the aesthetic was very unified, and that album tells a story.
Absolutely.
And the crazy fact that you recorded it where Sharon Tate was brutally massacred is crazy. Probably, I guess, regretful now, I think he said, but like that's another element.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he did
Yeah.
go back and like, because I believe he was like Sharon Tate's sister actually confronted him about that, and then I guess he started feeling regret about it.
Yeah, and then there's all the elements, the references to pigs and Piggy, and it's just and then Marilyn Manson being his protege. It was just the shock value of that, right? Knowing that it would freak out all the baby boomer parents.
For sure.
Calculated, but I think, yeah, Trent Reznor's a genius.
Yeah, seen Nine Inch Nails at least 4 times in concert.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Which was the best one? Best era you saw?
See, no, I didn't get to see them during the Downward Spiral era.
Yeah.
I got to see them during the Fragile era, and
Wow, that's still cool.
yeah, and that's another great album because it's emotional in a different sense.
Fragile is a really great record. My favorite song though is The Perfect Drug.
Oh my God, yes.
That's classic.
Off of the Lost Highway soundtrack.
Hey, yeah, that's an amazing song.
But the best show, I guess the first one, it would have been the perfect show for me had I been into the opening band at the time. It was Nine Inch Nails with A Perfect Circle opening up for them, and this is when A Perfect Circle had just came out, so I wasn't completely familiar with them and had fell in love with them. So that would have been the best show of all time for me.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow.
But that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, from what I understand, your first exposure to hip hop was ICP. You've even done a video series on their albums in chronological order called the Hatchet Chat series. So what is the series about?
Since they have so many albums and so many different artists on their label, I wanted to do like a 5-minute history of each album, talk about the samples, the cultural impact, kind of trace their rise and fall from mainstream attention, and then how they kind of persisted, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was fun. And they invited us, they saw it, and they invited us to play The Gathering, and they did a gaming convention in Denver that they invited me to play. And
was that Dark Carnival Con?
yeah. So that was cool. ICP, I love their imagination and their creativity and how proud they were to be from Detroit. What's your feeling on them as someone from the Midwest?
I had a big ICP phase back in high school, and I have massive respect for what they do. I mean, especially the grassroots level of raising a whole fandom around them. And from what I mean, because I have a friend, Tim, shout out to you, Tim, who's a huge juggalo, and I've never heard him say had a bad time with any times he's even encountered them. He's seen them plenty of times. Same thing with Twisted.
Yeah.
And I met Twisted personally, like in the interview I sent to you. And those two cats were like super cool. So I've never had any issues with ICP. I thought they were creative. I mean, I'm not a huge hip hop head myself, but the stuff that I did listen to, I did enjoy, you know. And I've even seen them at least once, maybe twice.
That's amazing. That's cool. Yeah, they inspire me a lot, and a lot of people would, you know, make fun of me for being a juggalo and everything, and especially in the nerdcore scene. It's like, oh well, it's not intellectual. They don't understand electrons and magnets. Their fans don't have PhDs. Ha ha ha. Which feels kind of classist and like cruel to tease them, but at the same time, a lot of the fans are a little wild and crazy. The gathering was crazy, like shooting fireworks in the crowd and just rambunctious nakedness, but I guess that's the rebellious spirit of the Dark Carnival.
But I would never make fun of somebody who likes something different from me. I always thought that was a stupid way to go about doing life. You know, I may not be in the ICP, but I'm not going to look down on somebody because they like something different. So I have respect for that because like every juggalo that I've encountered, I have never had any bad issues, you know.
They're the most nice, loyal fan base, and the Hatchet Chats are kind of a love letter to that movement, and I still want to do them, but it becomes like I get to this point where it's like, do I want to spend 2 days doing a love letter to this niche, or do I want to spend 2 days making my own music?
No, that's fair. I mean, because I did enjoy the 5 videos that you put up.
Thank you.
You know, I watched all of them in prep for this interview, so
Thanks,
I can at least talk about this. But no, they
Yeah.
were good. And if should you decide to do that down the road, I'll definitely check them out again because I was learning things.
Thanks,
because I
Joe.
do like the history of things as well.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and the fact that there's like so much, like Violent J wrote this long book, and there's all this history around it that kind of it's the story of how the death of the auto industry gave birth to a new underground culture, and that was like they were like the amalgamation of hip hop and punk rock coming together to create this kind of like metaphor for how people are judged and divided, and then how there is like redemption in that. And me being, I'm a Christian, and like I love the whole 6 Jokers card reveal about the spirituality of it, and all that like kind of resonated with me. So, and on a faith level, that is a big reason why I love them, and that's something people don't really talk about. I guess the fans do, but that they're like a Christian hip hop group with this vigilante message.
I remember the Joker card scared me so much when I was in high school because I was like, oh my God, the apocalypse is going to come once this last card hits. It was ridiculous.
And Jay's said he's apologized for like when 9/11 happened on the ICP site. They were like, it's a sign of the coming of the 6 Jokers card, and showing pictures.
Aware of that.
And then he was like, oh, never mind. I shouldn't have said that. But yeah.
So you mentioned in an AMA on Reddit that you were working on an autobiography and you were trying to decide if it was going to be a graphic novel or in the form of essays. If you go the route of graphic novel, what artist would you like to illustrate it?
I remember talking about that. I mean, I do cartoons. If I had the time, I would love to like double down on my illustration skills and do it. But I don't know if sky's the limit. Someone like Bill Watterson or Robert Crumb, like a legendary comics artist. Doing my podcast has kind of sublimated that desire to tell my story through writing an autobiography, because I think the main audience of people who'd hear it would people who'd get the audiobook. And so therefore the podcast has kind of become that. So I don't have a burning desire to write a book about my life as much as I did like in my early 30s when I was trying to figure out what my quote unquote like story would be, you know, and that's kind of, it's interesting. That's interesting. You looked that up. Yeah.
So why is the Hip Hop Family Tree by Ed Piskor one of your favorite comic book series?
I thought it was an original, well done tribute to the culture. I mean, I think especially when I started rapping and like in the early 2000s, there was kind of like maybe this not very clear awareness, especially in the nerdcore community with hip hop's as a social roots. You know, it kind of felt like it kind of just happened. So I felt like I was always promoting that series because I think it was a cool way to get comics fans into hearing like the very origin of hip hop in the Bronx. And you know, I think it's really beautifully done. Ed Piskor also did a great series on the beats, on Jack Kerouac and everything. And like, I think he's an awesome artist. Yeah, I love that series a lot. And I really recommend it. I used to be a very big fan of the hip hop academia, trying to read every book I could. And now I'm not as fascinated with the history of it as a cultural force, because I feel like, I don't know, what's exciting is what's new and what's next. I always felt like I wanted to prove myself as an expert on the culture, but I don't feel that as much as I used to. But I still appreciate history about hip hop. But I feel like what's exciting now about it is where it's going and the young people doing it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, shout out to much love to KRS-One and all the OGs. But yeah, I think if you constantly look backwards, you kind of trip over yourself and you don't really focus on what's new. And I think that is problematic and stultifying in that, like, it can make you just live a life of nostalgia. You know what I mean? Which is bad, I think, for an artist. I think there's nothing that's more poisonous than that if you want to keep pushing yourself. I don't know. That's my opinion.
So pretty much the Billy Corgan / Smashing Pumpkins route to keep pushing forward in different directions.
Yeah, I guess. But I guess you're right. That's an interesting comparison. But then, of course, what everyone cares about with them is original members or like playing the classic songs, right? And I think...
I'm definitely in that camp too.
Yeah.
I support artists and I want them to go out and explore instead of stagnating.
Yeah.
But also when I'm at a concert, I would hope to hear some of the hits,
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about Nerdcore is that, like, even though it's very small and we have a small loyal audience, they do know like the 4 or 5 bigger stream songs of each of us. So the goal, it's kind of cool because if you put 1 or 2 of those into the set, there's a lot of flexibility with the new stuff you do. Like this album I made with Megaran, we're playing a lot of new songs, and even though the album isn't out, people have been receptive to like a 25-minute block of new material, so that's tight.
I guess since we're still on the hip hop subject and with comics, have you ever checked out the Marvel hip hop cover books?
Yeah, those are awesome. I loved it. One of them was Great Malenko, I think.
Was it?
I forget which one, but it was that was tight. Those are really cool.
All right.
Yeah.
Are there any other indie comics that you like?
Well, yeah, let's see. I mean, I loved Matt Fury's Boys Club before all the peppy stuff made it like kind of like I love Matt Fury and like we've communicated and stuff, but that's great. And I think that's sad what happened to Peppy, but that's a whole nother conversation. I've always loved Matt Groening's Life in Hell, which I don't know if that's an indie comic. Yeah, those are some of my favorites. I guess Calvin and Hobbes, those are all more mainstream, but yeah, I guess, yeah, I've always loved going to Comic-Con. I love American Elf, James Kolchalka's like daily strip he used to do about himself. And Keith Knight, he used to be in a hip hop group called the Marginal Prophets. He does a comic strip called Think, and he's working on a TV show, and he's awesome. So those are my favorites.
All right. I mean, you did bring up Calvin and Hobbes because you wrote a song about Spaceman Spiff, I believe from the Jeff Sessions album.
Yes.
So favorite Calvin and Hobbes strips?
I guess my all-time...
I know that's like a all-encompassing question right there, or at least stuff that you remember that stood out to you.
My 2 favorites, probably the one where he has this metal record and it's all like glorifying Satanism and suicide, and the mom's like, well, Calvin, if they really were believed in this, they would have killed themselves and not just be trying to make music for commercial gain, right? And Calvin's like, Mom always takes the fun out of rebellion. That's so telling. To read that as a kid and then be like, oh, a lot of the the counterculture that is sold to us through mass media is kind of like cynical, I also like the last one where Let's Go Exploring. Yeah, that's beautiful. I quoted that in my high school yearbook. That quote. Yeah.
All I had was like the chorus from Walk by Pantera as my
Hey!
as my senior quote.
Shout out to them.
For sure. Rest in peace, Steinbeck.
Yeah.
Now, I proudly own the Calvin and Hobbes collection, like the hardcover 3-book series.
Amazing. That's awesome.
It was one of the first comic book collections I ever purchased. Well, I wouldn't... Is it a comic book or at least comic strip collections?
Yeah, I guess it's comic strips in the form of a book.
Fair enough. Do you read manga?
Not really. I would be fronting if I pretended I did. So, no, I'll be honest.
Okay,
Yeah.
so much for that topic.
Yeah.
What about anime?
I mean, I love Ghost in the Shell. I love Paprika. I loved Spirited Away. I don't know if I'm up on anything super new.
Okay.
But it's not something I know a lot about.
Have you ever seen Samurai Champloo?
No.
Okay, I think I think that anime would be up your alley because it's set in I believe Edo era Japan with samurais and whatnot, but the show is heavily influenced by hip hop culture.
Ah, okay. Champloo.
Champloo. Pretty much the entire soundtrack is some R&B, but mainly hip hop beats by like Suchi, Nujabes, who I really enjoyed, and it's just a great series. I would highly, highly recommend it as one anime series for you to check out.
That's cool, man. And it's interesting, like with martial arts and Asian culture, that goes back to Wu-Tang. They were so influenced by those old movies. So yeah, that's cool. Hip hop is always, I feel like fit. I don't know, that samurai or ninja kind of vibe. You know what I mean? It's a cool fusion because hip hop is about battling and skills and honor and your clan, your crew, right? So that makes sense. I'll check that out. Good recommendation.
For sure. It's only 26 episodes, self-contained story. You don't have to worry about anything else.
Oh, cool.
Any influential or favorite beat makers?
Yeah, gosh, that's a good question. I think Mike Clark, who did a lot of the big ICP records, is one of my favorite producers. I love Jam Master Jay, amazing producer. I think despite me disagreeing with a lot of Kanye's politics, I think he's still one of the greatest producers of our generation. Rick Rubin is amazing. So yeah, and Nujabes I think is dope too, of the newer ones.
Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago.
I know, it's so sad.
Because I like Samus, I like K Murdoch, and Nujabes.
K Murdoch's great. Dilla was awesome.
Yeah, I've heard some stuff by him, but like I said, I'm not a huge hip hop head, but I definitely have respect for the genre in itself. Who do you feel are underrated rappers?
Well, Sky Blue is great. He's from North Carolina. He's very prolific. He opened for Mega Ran and myself a few times, and yeah, I love him. He's underrated and great. Who else? There's always so many rappers coming up. I would say he's probably my favorite of the unsung, up and coming young artists.
Okay. Favorite or important hip hop videos to you?
Oh, interesting. Well, gosh, I like the Far Side one. I think it was Spike Jonze, where it's reversed, where it's I think it's called Trust, where they learned the verse backwards and they shot it in one take going backwards. That's a really cool one. I like the Billie Eilish. Her new stuff is cool. I guess that's not really hip hop per se, but the beats are kind of hip hop. I think she's awesome. And yeah.
Well, it was a controversial video when it came out. It's coming upon its year anniversary. But what are your thoughts on This Is America by Childish Gambino?
Oh, I thought that was brilliant. That was amazing. Yeah.
I just watched it again last night because for some reason the song kept playing over and over and over again in my head. I was like, all right, I will watch this again.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it, and I at least my interpretation of the message behind it, I just like, especially with Distraction, like when that video came out, it blew up, went viral, and then shortly after that, we were already on to the next thing instead of engaging in discussion.
Yeah, what do you feel like the theme is?
Well, for the video?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll ask you that too.
Yeah.
Well, for me, obviously, they're dancing, they're at the forefront, and they're distracting from all this, because it started, well, no, it didn't start off slow. All this chaos going off in the background, like, he goes into a Jim Crow pose, shoots the guy in the back of the head. Gun was handled with care because it was placed on a red, I guess, cloth and taken away gently. Well, that guy was just dragged off. Same thing with those folks that got shot. You know, I guess that was a reference to the church shooting, one of many that has occurred. And the gun, once again, was carried off on a cloth and stuff like that. And these folks are dancing, and you see all of this chaos going on in the background. And I feel like the main theme of that was like distraction by what's popular today, and then like I'm just rambling here, but distraction to take your mind away from like the really important things that are going on. What were your thoughts in the video?
Yeah, I think you're right. And like dancing is like, we're also focused on our personal style and our own little like ephemeral expressions of culture and art, that this horror behind us, if we acknowledge it, we will all just become so anxious and depressed and not be able to function. So it's like that juxtaposition of the joy and then the horror that is so much. Gun culture is such a part of our country's identity that it just seems like it's such a problem that's impossible to tackle, and so we distract ourselves.
I mean, I like the part where he was like, that's a celly, that's a tool, and they pan up to these kids. They all have masks over their face, and they're on their phones just filming everything. And that seems to be like our culture too, or just society in general. Like, people would rather film things instead of like getting involved. Now, yes, like especially like if you're going at World Star Hip Hop stuff, you see people getting like injured or getting into fights, and people are filming that and stuff like that instead of someone actively getting in and trying to stop that stuff.
Right, that's true. That's very true. That's like a broader theme of the video too. It's a good analysis.
I try. So, the last two topics actually, Edgar Allan Poe, and I definitely wanted to talk about your podcast before we wrap this up.
Oh, cool.
Why is Eldorado one of your favorite pieces by Edgar Allan Poe?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I was thinking about that poem today, actually. I mean, going back to this idea of gun culture, so much of what literature tells us about America, and especially like 19th century America, is this idea of like the idea of infinite possibilities is confronted with the limitations of nature and just like nature and survival and the biology of like all of us living on this planet, on this globe. And so Eldorado is this idea that like, he wrote in 1849, the year of the gold rush, this idea that there was this magic coast, this magic city full of gold and opportunity in California, and that maybe wasn't going to solve all of humanity's problems, right? And so the ghost tells him in that poem that like, even when you seek this golden land, you're still going to die. And I think that's like a very constant theme in Poe's work. And it's kind of also the one piece of Poe's that's kind of like a Western themed poem. So it's sad and beautiful, and like it's the telling of like the early 19th century culture of Romanticism meeting the end of Manifest Destiny, and like foretelling in a way the Civil War, and kind of like a harbinger for a lot of the themes in Moby Dick. And I just think it's a beautiful cadence. I'm doing a Poe album, a full Poe EP to come out next spring.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, LP. So I'm gonna do that song.
Okay.
For sure.
Do you have a favorite adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's work besides The Raven from Simpson's Treehouse of Horrors?
Probably that would be my favorite. But maybe what else? Gosh. Spose has a song about a Poe song. I think it's the Cask of Amontillado.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty dope. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll say that, yeah.
I guess like one of mine is this video by this band called Portal, this death metal band from Australia. The video's called Curtain, and it's loosely based off of The Conqueror Worm.
Oh, wow.
So
that's awesome.
Because Portal, whose shirt I'm sporting, they're all about horror. You don't know what any of them looks like, and their music is quite claustrophobic and stuff like that. And it's not even your typical death metal cookie monster vocals.
Yeah.
It's just like a kind of like a harsh whisper, is the best way to describe it. And I would recommend checking out that video for at least the aesthetics. I mean, I love the song, but I don't know how far into like death metal you go. So.
Well, I'm definitely a big fan of death metal.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What bands? I wish I would have known that.
I mean, one of my favorites as a kid was Inner Thought. That band is awesome. I love, what else? I mean, I love a lot of the black metal stuff like Burzum and all that
I
stuff.
can't get behind Burzum, man.
Yeah.
No. He's a horrible person.
I agree. Yeah, and there's that question of, can you separate the art from the artist? I guess not. That came to mind as like one of the shocking definitive bands of that genre, would you say?
What, Burzum?
Yeah.
Later on, Mayhem comes to the forefront, and then I loved Emperor. I still love Emperor. That's my favorite black metal band of all time.
What do you think is the biggest black metal band in the world that like most people recognize?
Emperor.
What do you think is that smells like Teen Spirit of black metal?
I once again want to say Emperor, or people would go with Mayhem.
Okay.
Those two, but Emperor is probably by far one of the most respected black metal bands of all time. Now, if people want to get They could also say old school Cradle of Filth, because Cradle of Filth was everywhere. They were at the forefront and stuff like that. But I loosely place them in the black metal category and stuff like that. But Emperor would definitely be a bucket list band that I would love to see.
I love that Hallowed Be Thy Name cover.
By Cradle of Filth?
Yeah, it's amazing.
And I like their cover of Black Metal.
Oh.
That's off of the Cruelty and the Beast album with the bonus disc.
Wow. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite. That's my favorite Cradle of Filth album, actually.
That's awesome. I played a show in Melbourne a few years ago, and they were there. And I gave them a shout out. They were just at the after party at the club there, and I gave them a shout out, and that was fun. They didn't. I don't think they got expected to be recognized by me, but yeah, I know some metal, and especially like Sepultura and like that whole movement. I love
old school Sepultura, like Arise.
Probably KSID is where I get in the mix there.
KSID is a solid album, but I love Arise. That's one of the best thrash metal albums I've ever heard.
That's cool. I love, and like you mentioned, Pantera. They're always one of my favorites. Heavy, hard music was like what helped me deal with a lot of like the frustrations of I feel like being a kind of weird, quirky middle school kid, you know?
But then it ties back into what you were saying earlier, like how people would basically generalize juggalos as this certain group that does that. I feel that would be the same way about how people who don't listen to metal feel about that. Like, oh, they're just screaming all the time, and, it's not that difficult to play metal. I was like, no, that's false. Like, you clearly haven't listened to this stuff on, not necessarily like, oh, my expertise level is up here. It's just like, I experienced this more, and I think I would have more of an opinion on this, or at least an educated opinion on this, than you would, And I always find that I find metal to be a very important genre to me, because like I can emotionally bond with that. There's some things that I can't get from pop songs that I can get from metal, like Hollow by Pantera. That song is just, that just speaks to the heart. You lost somebody and you're hoping for them to come back, but it's just not going to happen.
That's awesome. I think one of the interesting things to me is the jump off point where thrash and hardcore kind of derivate, right? Where punk and metal kind of become separate genres. And whether that's like a class thing or a technical ability thing, or, you know what I'm saying? Like if you listen to Minor Threat and then you listen to Pantera, to like a casual fan, aesthetically, fast chords, screaming, fast drumming, on the surface level, effing Hostile and Straight Edge are like similar sounding, but the culture and the proficiency and the movements are very different, and that's interesting to me. How something can be so similar aesthetically but culturally so like opposite, right? And that's interesting to me. I love hardcore music a lot. I love like Earth Crisis and a lot of like the Straight Edge. Those old bands are. Man,
I forgot about Earth
cool.
Crisis. I
love them, dude. They're one of my favorites.
That's a nod to the past that when I was in high school.
But don't you feel like if you listen to like that Earth, like Firestorm is such a heavy, crazy song that sonically is very similar to some like very heavy death metal, but to a fan who's someone who knows about the cultures, it's just like it couldn't be more separate. That's interesting to me.
No, man.
Yeah.
Wow. Shout out to Earth Crisis. But I can't say I was like a fan back in the day or anything like that, but I definitely had respect for what they did.
Just heavy and crazy music. You know how like punk and hardcore music, would you agree, is like kind of a subgenre of punk, whereas like thrash is more of a subgenre of metal. Is that correct, you think, in the taxonomy of music?
Yes, I would agree with those statements right there.
And then but and so what defines punk versus metal? Is it class? Is it proficiency with your instrument? Is it the band you grew up? That's interesting to me, because a lot of it seems contrived, the borders, and it comes from labels, it comes from geography, but I don't know.
Wouldn't necessarily be song structure and length.
So thrash is quicker, hardcore, but there's some hardcore songs that are very, very long,
like more than 3 minutes.
Yeah,
because even I know for some punk bands, 3 minutes is just too long.
I guess you're right. That's probably the defining difference, huh?
I mean, if we're gonna be not necessarily nitpick, you go into like grindcore, like what was it? Napalm Deaths.
Right.
They're for oh my goodness, the Extinction album. Forgive me, but like You Suffer. 2 seconds.
That was
tops.
on Silicon Valley. It was homies. Whenever he got an email, that was the alert, and he'd make his speakers really loud, and everyone freaked out. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about your podcast. And actually, I lied. Actually, there was a few more questions because I definitely wanted to talk about your puppet show and your your latest album with Megaran. But first, let's talk about your podcast.
Yes. Well, we're coming up on a year. I do
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. I do it every Monday. I used to do a show on Sirius before they merged with XM on their Left to Center channel. And I'd do it on the road. I'd interview, like you. I'd bring mics and interview the people I was on tour with and ask them questions. Like I did one episode with Dinosaur Jr. and like the other bands. So that was really fun. So I missed doing that. And I was like, and I had 2006, I had a podcast for I did one for 4 months and then I stopped. So I thought it would be cool to bring it back. And when I go on tour, I try to interview people in different cities if I can, and super fun. I end up usually interviewing my friends, but most of them they have interesting stories. So,
but isn't that the best type of interview because you can sit down and have a conversation? I've learned so much about MC Front a lot and Schaefer the Dark Lord from listening to your podcast, because it wasn't like you're just doing typical industry questions.
Right,
they know
right.
you. Their guard's down around you, and you guys, their guard is down around you, should I say? Not like you would be coming at them with TMZ type questions, but
Right.
it's like clearly like friends having a conversation, and it's just happened to be recorded.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. I think the main question of with the Nerdcore guys is why on earth are you doing this if the audience is tiny, we're all not making much money, and we've been doing this very long. Why do we? What are the bigger reasons that would make sense to someone outside of the culture why we're doing this? I love asking those questions because they are non-tangible, gigantic, profound existentialist things that drive us all. And it's often because it's we're trying to compensate for something we felt missing in high school, or even middle school. To be able to go to any city in America and play to 30 to 100 people it's for 15 years is cool. It's special. So the question is, why do this when to a lot of people that would be frustrating to not see that grow? You know what I mean? So it's fun to interview the nerdcore people because they do it often for a reason bigger than why most people go into music, I would say. And that's why I love those guys. And women, everyone, whatever gender. They're wonderful.
Why do you begin each episode with the quote from Julius Caesar?
That's a good question. Well, it started because Megaran and I have a song about Julius Caesar, and my verse starts with that. And so I just recorded that song on the day I did my first episode. So I was it's tune in. It's this idea that there's such competition for people's attention. And I know you know that as a creator of media, right? It's always how do we get people's attention? So it's lend me your ears, because that's a very dark, manipulative political speech Mark Anthony makes. So I thought it'd be a funny way to start each episode. I don't know if anyone listens to my show in Rome, maybe, but it's a metaphor. This is where we are at the end of the American Empire. So let's talk for a minute before everything burns up.
If people wanted to find out more about that podcast, where could they go?
mclars.podcast.com.
Okay. So I mentioned the
Let me flip that. Sorry. Podcast@mclars.com. I wish I had podcast.com.
Oh my goodness, the amount of money that you'd be raking in.
That would be, yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
So no worries. Can you talk about your rapping puppet show?
Yeah, we've been working on it. Something I came up with in 2005, and we've been doing a lot of work on it, and it's finally seeing some motion, but it's some stuff I can't exactly talk about, but
Fair enough.
It's really cool that this summer things are feels like they're gonna start moving, maybe or not, maybe another 10 years. But the idea is it's education. It's basically the Flow Like Poe video is. It's kind of that, but within half-hour segments where I host and educate through rap and puppets.
I mean, you do seem like you have a knack for that, because I watched a video of you going over Poe to a classroom.
Oh, okay.
And you seem completely comfortable. The kids were enjoying it, so that's definitely an avenue to look into for down the road. Or at least that's what I would feel for you.
Thanks, man.
I mean, because it looked like you were a natural in that setting, and no, I'm not blowing smoke here just for the sake of, I'm talking to MC Lars. Oh. No, I meant I just noticed that. I mean, I pay attention to people, and that's, I guess, how I can come up with interviews that I do.
Yeah, no, thank you. I love working with kids, and I think that hip hop, going back to the question about hip hop, kids don't care about Kool Herc and kids don't care about Public Enemy. They should, and they will one day, but they care about timeless things like rhythm and rhyme and music. So if you can use that as a way to educate people about social issues, especially young kids and literature, it's really powerful to make something that's like otherwise profoundly boring, like the scansion of a 18th century poem is so boring to most people, but to make it fun and fresh, I feel like that's a passion of mine. And I love working with schools. I'm doing a workshop in Pittsburgh for some school on this tour. So I find on tour, when I can, I like to, schools sometimes book me to come in and do those workshops. Something I hope to do more and more as I get older, like 36, and I definitely won't be touring forever. I'll always make music, but I always want to like be educating in some way, you know what I mean? So
That's excellent. Since we're still on the topic of literature,
yes.
Let's talk about your new album with Mega Ran called the Dewey Decibel System. What is the album for those who don't know?
Yes, so Mega Ran and I spent 3 years making an album about our favorite books, poems, short stories. We even did a graphic novel. We did Watchmen, and it comes out in June, and it's a collaborative record where we talk about our favorite books, and we've made 6 videos for it, and we put the pre-order up on Kickstarter, and we met our goal, and it's really fun because we recorded all the vocals in New York with our friend Brad in the same studio. And I think most rappers these days, when they collaborate, they just email the acapellas. To be in the same room in the studio together gave the album this exciting energy. And we did like 22 songs from which we picked our favorite 14, I think. So it kind of had this, we really worked hard on it. I think now these days with music, it's all about singles and viral quick stuff. So to do a traditional old school, like here's an album, it's actually physical. It was fun because Mega Ran he's one of my favorite rappers ever. And to work with him is an honor because he's phenomenal. But I think our voices sound cool together. And I think we are, in a way, we're both really similar people,
So why did you choose Watchmen as the comic to feature on the album?
That was kind of his idea. So I want to give him a shout out for that. But I also feel like you look at, like Time Magazine did the best 100 books of all time, and that was on there. I think it's the graphic novel that kind of transcended the form to be like, oh, comics can be literature, especially if you're talking about like the arbitrary designation of good versus evil, right? And like our fallibility as people and as superheroes. And the movie got a lot of flack, but I thought the movie was fantastic. And I read the graphic novel before, and I think they did a really true adaptation of it. So, and it was fun also, an excuse to do a posse song with everyone on the tour, and then Miss Eves and Quelly Chris playing different characters. And I think it came out great. That was the first single we put out for the album.
Yeah, I've noticed. Did you write a song about Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis for this album?
So Mega Ran has one called, I think it's called The Metamorphosis, and he has a video for it. For years I wanted to do one, but then I heard his. I was like, oh, he nailed it.
Okay, because I thought that was like, I could have swore I saw that was attached to the latest album, so I didn't know if that was a song based on Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis.
Yeah, maybe it was. Maybe we were talking about how that was an example of other stuff we'd done.
Okay.
I don't know.
Because like that would have been like the second song that I've noted that I've ever encountered that was based on The Metamorphosis. The first one was a rock opera from the show Home Movies from back in the day.
Oh, right. I remember that. Yeah.
So, all right, final
cool.
three questions. Well, actually, final subjects. If people wanted to find out more about you online, where could they go?
I'm on Twitter at MC Lars. I drop 2 songs a month on patreon.com/MC Lars. And all MCLars.com is where I send people. But those are my 3 main channels.
Okay. What would you like to say to all your fans from out there?
I want to say that Joe's a great interviewer.
Oh, I try.
All the other Nerdcore guys are like, oh, you're talking to Joe? Oh, he's so good. I was like, I know. He sent me all his videos. I'm proud to talk to him. I also want people to know that, I appreciate their love and support over the years, and to please pick up the Dewey Decibel System, and to try to be kind and to have hope that things are going to get better, because it's a weird time, but I want to spread that hope, and by people supporting my music and giving me their hope and positivity, it kind of becomes a cycle. So I want to put that out there.
All right. And Lars, as we're editing this, I wanted to say I have now kept my promise to you, because I met you at MAGFest in 2018, and I stopped you in the hallway and I asked you like if you'd be interested in doing an interview down the road. And you said, yeah, I would be interested in it. So I keep my word as best as I can, sir. So thank you so much for this interview. I truly appreciate it. This was definitely worth the wait.
Thank you, man. I remember that. You're a great interviewer.
All right, folks, this is Joe from... Oh, well, thank you, sir. Thank you. Oh, praise from MC Lars. Well, folks, this is Joe from My Geek Scene with MC Lars. Take it easy.